Thank you so much for joining me today, Charlotte. The reason I've invited you is because obviously I'm working towards basically a property school, but it's for kids that don't quite fit mainstream education. And from my understanding, you work with young people that are kind of similar to that. Is that right?
I do. So for the last 6 years, I've been working with a college and the Princess Trust. So we work with kids who are 16, say kids, young people, 16 to 25, and they come from a whole different range of backgrounds. You've got some who don't fit in mainstream education for a variety of reasons. Some are care sector, some are substance misuse, some are ex-convicts. So yeah, the whole range.
Excellent. And so you spoke a bit about the Prince's Trust. What is it that you kind of deliver to these young people?
Princess Trust is essentially an employability and personal development course. So the young people come to us for 12 weeks, and it's a very, very tailored. Do you want us to run through the breakdown of it?
Yeah, if you want to, yeah.
Yeah. So how it works in the first week is we get all the guys together in the team room, and we do a variety of different challenges and activities, which is meant to push them, make them feel slightly uncomfortable, but in a good way. Then on the second week, we take them on an away residential. So we actually go 3 nights, 4 days, and we just do tons of outdoor activities. It's really good. Then the young people come back together in week 3, and they have to fundraise a project, which they come up with the idea themselves. They tend to do like coffee mornings, car washes, and all that kind of thing. They raise the money, they do the project to benefit somebody in the community, all while they're developing themselves as a person and stuff to add to a CV. We send them on 2-week work placement, and then we'll have something called Next Steps, which is where we really do one-to-one work, focus on getting a good CV, focus on the application process, and everything that's involved in applying for a job. Then we've got 2 more weeks, which is called Team Challenge. That is working with people in the community that they probably won't have worked with before. So sometimes it's young people, it's the elderly, it's people with learning disabilities. There's loads of options. And then I put them under a little bit of pressure for week 12 when I say, hey, now it's time to present to a little audience of everything you've done over the 12 weeks. And you tend to find you get some of them who really get into it and want to make a change and a difference. But then equally, you get some of them who, unfortunately, no matter how hard you try, you can't help them, for lack of a better term. So
okay. And it's from 16-year-olds. So these are kids that have already finished school, right?
Yeah, they have to be left education, yeah.
And is it that then they've not got into college, so then they end up on your program? Is that how it works? How do you recruit?
Our recruitment is it tends to be a lot of referrals. So we primarily work with youth offending. The job centre refer people through. So it might be a case that they're just not job ready yet and they need to work on the confidence, communication skills, teamwork skills. But then you get youth offending, social services. The police are quite good referrers for us. So if we've got young people that are already offending, we'll obviously try and get them back on track, or they're very close to ending up in prison and being charged and things. So we're trying to minimise that as much as possible. But majority of ours do come from like youth offending in the job centre. It's a mixed bag, like I said before. Some people literally just need that boost of confidence and they're not ready. And some of them just come from, it's the households and I suppose it's the life experiences. And how do you say it nicely? They spend a lot of time seeing their parents not working and they're not bothered. So then they think, well, if they're not working, I don't have to work. And they just end up with this mentality where they don't have to do it. They don't need to work. Everything's handed to me on a plate. I'm not bothered. So it's a whole range.
Yeah, I would say that there is kind of we are in a generation of young people that feel like they just owed things. They don't have to work for things. I'm not quite sure how that came about, but I definitely agree that some of them come from families that, well, if your parents are telling you that every day, it doesn't matter what anybody else tells you, because they are the biggest influences in your life, right? So it can be even if you change their opinion during the day, if then you go home to the different message, it can be quite contradictory and hard to break out of that.
Very.
Yeah. But the program that you're delivering, that sounds amazing. I didn't even know that existed, which is weird because one of the governors at my school works for Prince's Trust. So is that program delivered like all over the country? Or
We've got them all over. I mean, at the company I work for, we're a partnership organisation to 2 colleges. So we've got like Stockton, Riverside and Derwentshire College. And we run 9 teams in the Northeast alone. Then you've got like another Prince's Trust who runs in the Newcastle area. It goes right down to London. It covers everywhere.
Yeah.
So yeah, well established.
In that 12-week course, obviously there's different components throughout it. Which bit of it do you think is the most life-changing for the young people?
I couldn't pinpoint one specific area. It depends on the young person. Usually residential, the second weeks make a break, because by that point, some of our young people have never even left their rooms to like even consider going somewhere with people who they don't know, because we tend to go to the Lake District, so we're out in the wild and money. That tends to help them, because they're like, oh my God, there's a world out there and I can do things. And then they learn what they're capable of, because we really push them out the comfort zone. But I suppose the biggest part is work experience. When they go out. So I've got a case study. If you want to hear my case.
Give us a case study.
There was a young lad who joined. Well, his mum signposted him actually, and said, "I just need you to help him. Like, do whatever you can." And I said, "Okay, well, we'll try." So he was a young laddie, and starting to go down the route of alcoholism, very, very young. So when we go on our residential, it's no drugs, no alcohol, nothing. It's you're going on this teetotal. And on the morning, I'd seen him like sort of run around the corner to have a can. I'm thinking, oh my God, like, oh, what do I do? Because they're not meant to drink, but we're technically not on residential yet. So I turned a blind eye. I was like, Howie, on the bus, off we go. So we got to this place, and you could tell he was really anxious, and he was like fidgety with his hands. And I said, what can I do to try and help you feel comfortable here? And, we'll try and break the cycle of this issue. And he was like, can we have some colouring books? And I was like, oh, okay. So off we went, got the colouring books, got the pens. He filled an entire book in 3 days, just colouring. And they have in a group, the trainers there just want everybody to do like a little mini icebreaker, if you will. And he was always very open with everybody about where he was and how he'd fallen into troubles, if you will. And the trainers were like, wow, that's amazing that you're here. That's really good. What do you want to do? And he was like, oh, I want to be an outdoor instructor. So they'd said to him there and then, actually, you've got the qualities, but you've still got a few weeks before work experience. So let's do a deal. If you can get to week 7, so by this point we're in week 2, with no alcohol at all, and you focus, you commit, you do your targets, we'll give you a 2-week work experience. So fast forward a bit, work experience come, and he got the 2-week work experience at this place, and he absolutely nailed it. And he was like, oh my God, like it's a month, it's nearly 2 months, I've had no alcohol. He's like, yeah. So he done the 2-week work experience, and they said, right, next target is to get to the 12 weeks and still have no alcohol, and we'll give you a job. So he was like, right, okay, I've got something. That's good, yeah. So fast forward to 12 weeks, he got the job, worked really well. And I mean, I speak to him still now, and him and his mum sent us a message the other day, and they were like, oh my God, it's like nearly 5 years now with no alcohol. He's got a job, he's now married, house, car. So it just goes to show it's powerful what it does, because we do a lot of one-to-one work, so we really dig into why they think the way they think and what is it that's triggered them to think that way. So yeah, it's quite intense, but it's good.
That's brilliant. Yeah, we went to Lambourne End to do Duke of Edinburgh they're doing the Duke of Edinburgh next week. But they just, on the first day where they just learn how to put up a tent and stuff like that. And we chopped wood, we made a fire, we made popcorn on the fire. I didn't know you could do that.
Nor did I.
Like a sieve, but the sieve is like clamped at one end, so it closes like that and you put the things inside the sieve. So at the end of the day, one of the students, he comes to me, he was like, Shona, I've asked the guy if I can do just some volunteering here. And like I was like, what? Did you? And he was like, yeah, I don't know if it's available, like it's really far. And he's like, no, I already spoke to him and he said he thinks it's possible and I'll get my dad to bring me. And I was just so impressed, because this young man, I've worked with him for maybe 3 years,
Mm-hmm.
and he hasn't loved education, and there have been a lot of troubles. And the fact that after one day he wanted to volunteer somewhere, I was like, that's amazing.
It is. Wow.
Yeah, no, it was really good. So I'm excited for him. Whereas the other student, when he told him, he was like, you should volunteer too. He was like, why would I work and not get paid? And it was like, yeah. Then he went, no, but we could still put it on our CVs. It would look really good. And just that mindset is like, it's just that shift is just so important. And I couldn't believe it happened in one day. So yeah,
That's amazing. It's incredible.
Yeah, it is.
Fair play.
So do you think there's a reason, something to do with the education system, that some people fall, I'd say, like out of the net kind of thing, when they leave, that then there's a need for you to run projects like this? Do you think there's something wrong and that's why it happens, or it would happen anyway, no matter what?
I think it's a difficult one. That if it's going to happen, it's going to happen. But I think the education system needs a very sharp shove into reality. I just think the way it runs now, and it really infuriates me. These young people who come to me and they're like, my teacher was this and he didn't understand us and they haven't got the time, and they've obviously got so many people to look after. And, oh, well, I've got ADHD and I was just shoved in the corner and not bothered with. I was labelled the naughty kid. And they haven't got the time. And a lot of them, they don't want to, they'll admit it, they don't want to sit there and learn. Like I mentioned previously, like algebra and all these things that aren't going to help them. And I had a conversation with one student and I said, what do you think needs to, in your opinion, because you're just out of school, what do you think needs to change? And they were like, but why can't we be taught how, I mean, I know you do food technology, but how to survive on your own, how to manage a house, how to have a tenancy agreement, how to read a pay slip, how to apply for a job, how to get through an interview. So I just think it's old fashioned, it's dated, and a lot just needs to change. I know what I want to say, but I can't say too much.
Do you think it would be valuable for the 12-week program that you deliver, which you do if they've left education, if that was actually part of year 10 or 11? Do you think that would be more valuable?
Yes, because I think that's what's lacking in school. You know, like when I was at school, oh my God, maths, ugh, hated it, didn't like the teacher, didn't get on with it at all. And I was just made to feel like a failure. And I think sometimes these kids, that's what they express to us. They're just made, because they don't get something first time, and they're made to feel like a bit of just a failure. And I'd said, when I had an interview with the Prince's Trust, if I'd had something like that at my age at school, I would have jumped at the chance. And I think, yes, absolutely, because you work on that one-to-one level and have the time to work on the personal development with them and boost the confidence and learn about themselves. It's madness how many young people come through the program, and the first question, and I'm like, right, you've got to list a couple of strengths that you've got, personal qualities and areas for weaknesses. Well, what's wrong with this? You tell me what, no, you tell me what your qualities are. And they just don't know. So I think if they had that actual time one-to-one to learn about themselves and what qualities they do actually possess, would be really, really good. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, and I think what's interesting from what you said, like you get that one-on-one time, like one adult talking to one child, whereas in like a mainstream school that you do have that one teacher for 30 kids. So I feel like it's not even the teacher's fault. It's like the way that the whole system is set up is so that you don't get individual care or conversations, and that just does mean that some people can't cope. And I just wonder why, once they've left and then they become neat, so they're not in education, not in employment, then suddenly the government can afford to give them one-to-one attention. But it was like, why did you give them 1 to 30 attention for the whole of their school life? I mean, even if you dropped it down to half of that, so it was 1 for 15, or if you could afford to have one for every 10, like I'm sure they would have less people that would get stuck when they finished, because they just would have had more, just personal attention.
It's more support. And I think the difference is when you've got that time to do one-to-one, you've got they can find out about you, and I can find out about them, and it gives you that chance to you learn about them. What are their barriers? What's the lifestyle like? You know, who influences them, and it's trust. That's what's lacking. So I have all the time in the world to build up that trust, and like, okay, yeah, and they start believing and understanding what I'm saying. So I feel sorry for teachers. I mean, bless them. I'm not against it, but they've just got so much to deal with, haven't they, really?
Yeah.
But I do think the education system could be tweaked. Why not have a couple of staff who come in and are support workers? So while the teacher's sort of teaching your main session, if you will, you've got somebody who's doing the one-to-ones for, for young people. There's no reason why they can't.
In my school, because obviously I work in alternative provision, so we have one coordinator and one group staff which are with like 10 kids or less all day, and then the teachers travel around. So most of the time you've got 3 members of staff with you for up to 10 kids, so there's plenty of time for chats and conversations. And when the kids first come to us, we're like brutally honest with them, and sometimes they find that a bit taken back, because like in mainstream school they don't really tell them anything about themselves, right? They keep themselves quite, I'm a teacher, I teach, and that's it. But I'll be like, I'll start talking about my girlfriend and they look at me like, did she just say that? And then I'll just keep talking, so they don't question it. They might ask me about it like 2 weeks later because they realize it was just normal that I said that, but they wouldn't do that in mainstream school, because that would be like a taboo subject to talk about. Or I'll talk about how if a kid starts saying, oh miss, you spelt that word wrong, and they'll start cussing me, and I'm like, I'm dyslexic, and what? And they're like, oh, how can you be a teacher if you're dyslexic? And I was like, I'm a really good teacher. Teaching has nothing to do with being able to spell. It's about me being able to engage you in what you need to learn. And so I just feel like then you break all these rules of what school actually should be.
That's kind of what the young people say to us. Because they worry about joining, because think college, it's going to be like, don't do this, don't do that, follow the rule book. And I said, no, we are very, very relaxed. And a lot of the time, the young people will come back to you and say, I could actually develop and be the person I want to be because it's chilled and I've got the time to get to know you. Like I'll let them know kind of what they need to know, but I don't go to the ins and outs of me. So, it's back to trust again. So you'll get some young people who've come through the care system and they've had god awful lives, like so bad. And a lot of the time they've got every barrier up. They've got a brick wall up here, and well, what do you know? And sometimes I'm like, what would I know? And I'm like, okay, let's have a conversation. And I'll let them know some things about like my life and what I've been through. And they're like, wow, I didn't think, whoa, really? And then instantly we've got that connection and understanding, because then they know because they'll offload to me that I get it, I understand. And that's what they've said, their frustration is that nobody's listened, nobody's understood, and actually just took the time to just talk about it. Do you know? So there's a lot that needs to change.
Going back to what you said about, I don't know if you said this before we started recording, but it was about like in school, like learn how to file a tax return, how to do a CV, how to do those kind of things, like life skill stuff. I find it very interesting how many adults don't know how to do a lot of that stuff. And is it because they didn't learn in school? Maybe. Is it because, I don't know, I think there's loads of people I talk to. I talk about money all the time, my friends will tell you. And like there's things they just don't know about, like mortgages. You don't understand really how a mortgage works until you have one. And then suddenly you're like, click, click, click. But would it be good to understand that when you're in school, maybe?
I think so. So I tried a session with not this team, but the team prior, and I was like, right, this is what we're going to talk about today. I'm like, it's a little bit boring, but you need to know these things. And literally, I was inundated with questions for what was meant to be an hour session, went on for 4 hours, and I'm like, wow. And I get charged that much, and how does this work? And really, and I can earn this, and oh, that's what that means. And it is astonishing because I'm like, some parents are teaching it, but why aren't some of the parents teaching them this? It's such a basic pay slips. You know what I mean? It's such a basic thing. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I know so many adults now that they get paid and they've spent the money before the money comes in, because the mindset is, well, I get paid next week, so if I spend it now it'll be back in the bank before it gets taken out, or something like that, or I'll put it on a credit card. Like, whereas I think completely different. I'm like, no, I can't spend it until I've got it. Even holidays and stuff. I do sometimes like to book a holiday like a year in advance and pay monthly. But my girlfriend will be like, no, we save the money for the year, then we book the holiday, because it's like, don't commit to something that you haven't actually saved the money for. And I think that's a very different mindset that people have.
It is, but I think things like that we cover money management and budgeting, so we'll literally go through how to manage a house, and I'll say to them, what do you think you need to pay? What do you think you need to do? Well, I don't know, maybe electric, gas. And what do you need in the house? And like, well, as long as I've got a bed and a PlayStation, I'm cushy. I'm like, oh my God. And it's funny, but when we go through money management, and one of them was like, I'll just get a credit card, it's fine, and then I'll just pay a couple of quid, and they just don't get what they're signing up to and how interest works and 0% balance cards. So we cover all of that now, because one young person had and ended up in a world of just an absolute poo storm, so I'm not going to swear, because where they'd gotten the loan was a payday loan, and then it spiraled out of control, and then you've got loan sharks and stuff. So all this stuff they need to be educated on.
Yeah,
so
I mean, I think it's really surprising that they can even get payday loans and credit. I mean, I know the system's changed a little bit recently, because the government were like, yeah, like these people shouldn't be allowed to have them, because if you don't have the money, how are they going to pay it back next week if they didn't have it today? It just doesn't make sense, does it? You just get
it doesn't, but they just bury their head in the sand and hope it's going to go away. Like, the reality is it's not, though. It's only going to get worse. So yeah, a lot to change.
Yeah, there is a lot to change, and I think that, like, in maths lessons, like you're saying about the algebra and stuff, like it's so fixated, education, on the exam result and what they're going to get in that exam. But how much, if I'm interested to go through it next week now, if I went through a GCSE maths exam paper, like, how many of those questions have anything to do with what you ever do in real life,
with everyday life?
Yeah, but what functional skills were supposed to be, but then even that's getting harder and harder as well.
I mean, to be fair, when I was at school, there was such a massive emphasis, and my grades were shocking, absolutely shocking, because I just didn't like the school environment. It just, everything about it was just horrible. And I think there's so much focus on, oh, I've got to get good grades. I've left school and got into my first job, I've never ever been asked about my grades. Never been asked, never had to present anything. And I said to the young people, like, I've been to university twice now, and I said I didn't have the grades I needed to get in. But I was quite fortunate that the course leader was like, oh, well, we'll have an interview. Actually, I really like your drive and who you are and how focused you are. So you might have to work a little bit harder and have that support, but it doesn't matter that you haven't necessarily got that grade. And I was given the chance, and like some young people who I've helped get into work, they were like, oh, mate, man, I failed school, haven't got maths, haven't got English. That's fine, we can work on that. They're all in apprenticeships now, and they're getting that work, that like that support that they need. Now we've got the foot in the door to work on the maths and English whilst they're doing their apprenticeship. I don't know.
Do you feel, because I want to work on doing more apprenticeship stuff, like I said, with pre-16s, because I feel like it's all catered for after you're 16, because they want everyone to get the GCSEs for that point, and then they're allowed to go do something they're interested in. But I feel like, well, why not let them do the thing they're interested in a little bit before? Because once you're doing something you want to do, you just work harder at it, right?
Of course you do.
Yeah, so that's what I'm working towards.
I think it's a really, really good idea, because how many of these, if you introduce something like that, you're going to get overall better results from the young person because they're doing what they want to do. They're getting a taster. Okay. And how many of them leave school with not a foggiest of what the next step's going to be? They just don't know. And that's another thing that I feel lacks, is like, right, okay, you're a statistic, you finished school now, off you pop. And they're like, oh my God, what do I do? Where do I go? Do you know what I mean? And
Yeah.
I think there's not enough support. That's just my personal opinion, whether it's right or wrong, but there's not enough support for these young people to.
I feel like you need more of a pick and mix at school to try out different industries and stuff, because when you're at school, the only jobs you really know about are what your parents do, or you could work in a school because they've been in a school their whole life. You don't know about anything else. They might know also that you could be a footballer or you could work in a shop, but there are millions and millions of different jobs that you just have no idea exist. And so you don't know what you like until you've been exposed to it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Exactly that. And I mean, no, I think it's a very good point to cover in schools, because you look at the 16 to 25 that I work with, and I've got 25-year-olds who still never even had a job, and I'm thinking, crikey, it's going to be quite hard to get you in employment when you've had such a long gap and you've done nothing with it. Yeah, but no, like I don't know what I want to do, and they've got nobody there to kind of talk through, like, what about this? What's your interest? Do you fancy this? Do you fancy that? Maybe it's this, maybe it's that. And that's where we come along and say, like, okay, let's figure this out. So I think something like that in school would be really good, and helping the young people just to realize there's more out there than, as you say, what the parents do. It's cool. So much. Yeah.
Cool. Thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciate it. Do you want to, is there anything else you want to add on to the end of this interview before we close it off? Or are you all right? Anything you want, a message that you feel like you needed to put out there? Or not really? You're fine. That's good.
I'm all good.
You've been great. Thank you so much for sharing all of that with me and whoever's going to watch this, because I'm trying to push out this message about what I want to do, but it's nice to interview people that have similar experiences, because the more that the message is pushed out there, the more likely we can make change. So thank you very much.
You're very welcome. Thank you for having me.
All right then, I'll see you later. Have a lovely day.
You too.